Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into a totally fascinating and honestly, deeply moving narrative from our sources. It's all about a mysterious, ticketless traveler who literally transformed an entire city. And this isn't just your standard story about miracles. It's a profound look into human psychology, the nature of belief, and our own hidden potential. Okay, so picture this. It's a freezing December night at the Varanasi Cantonment Railway Station. The Kashi Express pulls in at exactly 11:50 p.m., and this man steps off. He has zero luggage. I mean, he's barefoot, wrapped in a dirty kurta and dhoti, carrying nothing but a tiny bundle. When the ticket collector stops him, the man just smiles, pulls a dry peepal leaf out of his bundle, and hands it over. Now here's where it gets really strange. When the ticket collector touches that leaf, it actually feels hot, like burning up with a fever kind of hot. Startled, the collector steps back, and poof, the traveler just vanishes right into the crowd. Since literally no one knew his name, the city just started calling him Yatri Baba, the Traveler Baba. And that one moment set off a chain of events that kind of challenges our whole understanding of life. So that brings us to 5 lives, 5 deep questions. Let's see who we met. Our sources highlight 5 wildly different people he encountered in the winding streets of Varanasi. We've got a wealthy businessman grieving his young son, a super arrogant university professor, a young woman completely shunned by society, a farmer right on the brink of suicide, and this really tough police inspector. These 5 basically represent the whole spectrum of human suffering and ego, and Yatri Baba's interactions with them, well, they're brilliant case studies in psychology. He shows us exactly how different types of pain need totally different piercing truths. Let's start with the wealthy Seth, the grieving father. His young son had just drowned, and the father is crying by the funeral pyre, just wailing, asking why God took his boy when he had donated so much money to charity. Yatri Baba looks right into his eyes and delivers this absolutely crushing realization. He basically says, yeah, you donated, but you did it with ego. You fed the hungry, but you made sure the cameras were there. You built temples, but you literally carved your own name into the marble. God didn't want his money. He wanted his his ego. Baba told him his son hadn't just died, he'd actually carried away the father's karmic burden. And wow, that completely shifted the father from playing the victim to a state of profound surrender. Now compare that to how he handled Professor Raghav. This guy was a strict atheist at Banaras Hindu University, completely convinced God was just a made-up fairy tale. He gets right in Baba's face, demanding proof. So what does Baba do? He pulls out a dry clay lamp, no oil, no wick whatsoever, and simply blows on it. Boom, a blue flame ignites. The professor scoffs, of course, calling it a cheap chemical trick. But Baba just nods and agrees. He says, sure, the whole world is chemistry, but while the professor is stuck staring at the elements, Baba's looking at the creator of those elements. He then challenges the professor to burn his lab equations with that very flame and see what's left. It was brilliant. He entirely dismantled the guy's academic arrogance on the spot. Then we have the young, traumatized girl. She was an assault survivor just weeping because society kept calling her impure. It got so bad she was actually considering jumping into the Ganges to end it all. Baba just gently placed a hand on her head and gave her this gorgeous analogy. He reminded her that the river Ganges never, ever calls anyone dirty. The real impurity, that's strictly in the minds of the people judging her. He told her she was a flowing river, and true purity can't be tainted by the shallow judgments of society. He called those judgmental people dry wells. And honestly, can a dry well stop a river? Absolutely not. And he threw a similar metaphorical lifeline to an elderly farmer who was completely broken by drought and debt. The poor guy literally asked Baba if he should just go drink poison. Baba reframed that whole dark moment. He told him, look, drinking poison isn't going to magically turn your fields green. Instead, he told the farmer to think of himself as a seed. A seed has to be buried. It has to sit in that suffocating, heavy darkness before it can ever break through the soil. This wasn't the end of his life. It was just the necessary darkness before some tremendous growth. So the real takeaway from all these encounters is that Baba never offered magical band-aids. He forced people to look in the mirror. For example, when local politicians got threatened by Baba's rising popularity, they sent this tough-as-nails police inspector to arrest him. Baba's like, sure, I'll go to the station. But then he stops the inspector with one piercing question. Where will you lock up the fear hiding under your uniform? The inspector just froze. See, as a kid, he'd watched his own father take bribes, and that deep, ugly trauma had secretly haunted him his entire life. Hearing Baba call it out, the inspector broke down in tears, completely disarmed.
Okay, moving into our next section, the 5-day sermon at Dashashwamed Ghat.
Having diagnosed the real pain of the city, the sources say Baba gathered millions, literally millions of people at the famous Ghats to deliver 5 massive, paradigm-shifting messages over 5 days. He systematically tore down centuries of dogma into these actionable, really personal truths. He didn't ask for money or temples. Instead, he tackled religion, the age of Kali Yuga, worship, death, and finding your inner voice. Right out of the gate on day 1, he strips away all the rituals. He defined true religion purely by our real-world moral choices when things get tough. He said religion isn't found inside a brick building. It happens in that split second when you could easily lie to save your own skin, but you actively choose to tell the truth. Or actually, it's when you're starving. You hold the very last piece of bread and you give it to a stray dog instead. Everything else, he told the crowd, is just a business transaction with God. Now, what's really fascinating in the sources is day 4, where he completely redefines death. He shifts it away from just, a physical ending into a psychological state. He basically said, the fire at the cremation ground only burns your clothes, your physical vessel. But psychologically, you die every single day you hold on to hatred. And on the flip side, you are reborn the exact second you find the capacity to forgive. He tied our literal existence to forgiveness, begging this massive crowd to just drop their fear. Then on the 5th and final day, the big reveal, the crowd is begging to know who he actually is. And he tells them he isn't some deity floating outside of them. He's the voice coming from right inside their own chests. He said, when you do the right thing when no one is watching, that's me speaking. When you fall and force yourself back up, I am the hand pulling you. It's just a beautiful way of saying that the divine intervention we're always looking for out in the world is actually just our own dormant courage. Which brings us to the aftermath. 5 gifts, 5 lifetimes. After the sermon, Baba announced he was done, but before vanishing into the Ganges, he left 5 totally ordinary, almost useless objects for those 5 people we met earlier. And the transformations that followed were wild. He left a simple peepal leaf for the father to show how fast life changes. The unlit clay lamp went to the young girl to guide her through dark courtrooms. The dry bread went to the farmer to remind him that hunger is the greatest religion. A totally blank book for the professor to write his own truth, and a clear glass bead for the inspector, proving that the stains of fear can actually be wiped clean. These seemingly random items sparked massive, lifelong changes for every single one of them. Just to put that into perspective, look at the grieving father. That one interaction about his ego completely derailed his old life. He gave up his massive wealth to a trust, and that transformation created a safe, loving home for literally 1,000 orphaned children. Let's move to our final section, the final question. Was he truly God? So Yatri Baba walked into the Ganges that night and just disappeared. No body was ever found, just a single peepal leaf floating on the surface. And obviously this sparked a debate that has lasted for decades. Was he a divine avatar, a master of mass hypnosis? Skeptics point to his incredible grasp of human psychology, calling it profound hypnosis. But the witnesses? They swear by the miracles. In fact, an 8-year-old boy who was there that night grew up to be a famous, highly respected scientist. And to this day, that scientist insists he literally saw Baba walk on the water, with lotus flowers blooming under his feet, right before he merged into a blinding light from the sky. Ultimately, if you go to Assi Ghat in Varanasi today, you won't find some giant golden statue of him. There's just a small, quiet stone inscription that gives us the real answer. It says, "I am your courage, an unknown traveler." It's a perfect reminder that he wasn't necessarily a god in the sky waiting to grant our wishes, but rather a mirror, reflecting our own enormous capacity for resilience and doing the right thing. And today, right at that very stone, people don't light oil lamps. Instead, they practice exactly what he preached. They sacrifice one bad habit, like anger or greed or lying, and they declare that their inner lamp is lit. So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this thought. If you had to truly worship today by giving up just one of your own flaws to light your inner lamp of courage, what would it be?